This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
What's the future of writing and creating content now that we have these generative AI systems that do it so quickly? It's honestly something I think about all the time. You know, I've been getting paid to write for 20 years. I was a former journalist, and it's something as we see developments in generative AI and the type of writing and content they produce, it's always important to think and talk about the future. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today on Everyday AI. So welcome. My name's Jordan. I'm your host, and this is your daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter, bringing you the absolute latest and greatest and what's going on in the world of Gen AI. So this isn't just about learning and, hey, here's all this stuff that's going on, but we break it down and give you practical and tactical advice on how you can actually use what we talk about to grow your company, grow your career. All right. So a little bit different, a change up today. We got to spice it up here on Everyday AI. So not everyone can do a 7:30 a.m. Central Standard like time zone. Like that's early for a lot of people, especially if you're in different city, different state, different country. So this is still going to be debuting live. Don't worry. But it's actually technically pre-recorded. Hey, we won't tell anyone if you don't, right? So with that, I'm excited. If you still want the AI news, don't worry. Just go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for the free daily newsletter. We're going to have the daily news. So don't worry. You didn't forget it. It's just in a different spot. So let's talk now about the future role in a world of AI. How are we going to write content? How are we going to create content? So I'm not on this alone. I'm very excited to have our guest for today. Let's bring him on and welcome him to the show. Matt Thomas is the owner of Perfect Prose Writing and Editing. Matt, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jordan. How are you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. So Matt, just tell everyone just real quick a little bit about what you do with, Perfect Prose Writing and Editing, and maybe a little bit about your background as well.
Sure. I'm the owner of Perfect Prose Writing and Editing. My background is kind of all over the place, but I've been a writer for the past 13 years. I've worked as a technical writer, a copywriter, professional editor, and most recently last year, content creator, especially LinkedIn. So yeah, obviously I've got a kind of a varied background in writing, but pretty excited about the impact of AI.
Yeah. And I'm curious about this, Matt. Because I remember, I talked about at the top of the show, I've been in the writing space, give or take for, 20 years. I remember my first reaction to seeing the GPT technology. I think it was either late 2020, early 2021, when GPT-3 was first released through other commercial products. And when I saw it, I was like, wait, what? Like, do you remember the first time that you saw like a generative AI system, like create copy? And if so, like, do you remember like what your reaction was?
I mean, it wasn't that long ago, man. I only started really using it. Like I signed up for ChatGPT last December, but as soon as it kind of hit the market on a bigger scale, everyone was talking about it, right? And it was actually one of your posts that kind of got me. I think it was either last year or like early this year, where you were talking about, I've been a writer for 20 years, and it pains me to say this, but like I think a lot of writers are going to get replaced by AI if you don't start learning to use it and work with it. And that kind of lit a fire under my ass. I was like, and then once I started playing with it, I was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. And let's maybe even we'll do it a little differently today too, Matt. Let's skip to the end, and then we can go and hit rewind. But when we talk about even the future role of writers and content creators, I mean, what do you think that is? I have a lot of thoughts, but I want to open with just like, what is it going to look like in the future for writers and content creators? Let's skip to the end.
I mean, I think in the future, the most efficient, most effective writers are going to be able to leverage AI and like work with it and know how to use it for different purposes. I mean, the thing is, I think that like a good writer who knows how to work well with AI is just like more efficient and can be more effective than a good writer who can't. And I think that it's still a solid writing background and skills are still valuable, right? It's like I'm a musician too, but like if you put someone with no musical training in like my studio or sit them down at my drums, they're not going to be like, you know what I mean? Like there's technologies I can use like samples and loops and stuff like that, or plugins to like expand what I'm doing. But I mean, I think having the skills, that base to begin with, definitely it gives you like makes you more effective.
Yeah. I it's actually such a great point because maybe even I personally overlook that aspect of it of being a writer by trade, how much that actually helps. Once you jump into any generative AI system, maybe even talk, Matt, a little bit about like your learning curve. Like, was it easy for you to start using? I'm guessing you're using tools like ChatGPT or something like that, but I guess what was your learning curve like? Was it maybe a little easier than average, maybe because of your writing background?
Um, yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, the thing is, I think that was good about when I started using is I didn't really have any expectations, or I wasn't like I need to. I just started playing with it. You know what I mean? Which I think is probably the best approach. And then just playing with it consistently. I mean, I wasn't super impressed by the written output of GPT, and I'm still not particularly impressed by it. But I mean, there's ways I'm getting better at prompting it. But just yeah, just playing with it and just being like, this is pretty crazy, like how you can just frame things in different ways and how you can just add different context to shape your responses. And um but yeah, I mean, I remember being like underwhelmed by the actual like copy output, but more just like that was the least interesting thing about it to me. It was more the creative possibilities with it.
Oh, I love that. Uh, yeah, because and we'll talk about that a lot, but the creative possibilities I think within ChatGPT, especially ChatGPT when you use plugins, is endless.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to something you said there because I'm interested and I want to dig in a little bit more. You said that you were underwhelmed with the quality of the output. So maybe like especially you, right? Like so you have a background in technical writing, and we'll include this in the show notes. Matt actually puts out great content on LinkedIn. He's always like comparing and breaking down writing to like very, very like meticulous level, right? Like word order, number of words, cutting the fat, all of that. So I want to dig in a little bit deeper into the words and into the output and the quality. So maybe in your experience, when you say you're underwhelmed with the output of what you're getting out of ChatGPT, maybe talk about that a little more. Maybe what's some of those things that you're like, it could be better here.
I mean, especially when I started prompt, I didn't know, I had no idea what I was doing, right? Like when I started prompting it, I was just putting in just I mean, I was impressed by it at the time, but now looking back, I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's but it's like anything, like you said, there's a learning curve, right? Like, I mean, I've been using it. I use it every day, especially like as a content creator. It's been a godsend in being able to put out content consistently. Um, but yeah, like I just how fluffy the language was, right? Like just it doesn't write in a way that's my preferred kind of tone. So, but again, I don't think I've never just copied and pasted the output of anything and like posted that as a post just because like it just I mean sometimes, but um where I do find it helpful is like I really like using it as like a second opinion or like an assistant. That's something because it's almost like having a writing partner or just like an objective person to bounce ideas off of, which is something I find helpful, especially like if you're a writer like me who can get like kind of into the details and the nitty gritty and just like this word or this word, like I can't decide, like it's just one word, but like I mean all those details add up, so I need like a second I like having that like a second opinion basically.
Yeah. And I'm going to go ahead and reframe this and let's talk about it a little bit more because Matt, like what you said there, I think that's where so many people, one, they either give up on ChatGPT when they see the output's not that great. So it's great to hear and to for other people to hear your advice that's saying like, oh no, even though I was maybe not, super impressed by the output originally, I still kept going at it and found, maybe other or better use cases for your particular, role. But one thing I want to talk about is a lot of people think of even ChatGPT as an extension of themselves, which it absolutely can be. But one thing I like to tell people is think of ChatGPT, and you kind of reference this here, Matt, is think of it almost as not just a second opinion, but I always like to tell people, think of it as an outside entity. So instead of collaborating or having this, be 10% of your work or 50% of your work, you be 100% and have ChatGPT be 100% and treat it as a completely separate entity. So maybe talk a little bit more
100%.
about that approach. I'd love to hear.
No, that's actually probably the best way to describe it, because I've just conceptually, I've never really looked at it as a replacement for my writing. So like, I think that is actually probably the best approach, is like, I'm still going to write it. I'm still going to put it 100% of it in. And that's like one thing I think as well is, when you come at it with like a strong idea, like a strong initial idea, I find, and then use it to kind of refine that, I find it's more effective. Like that's the best way to put it, is that like, I think it's least effective, or you're not really using it to its full potential or well, if you just see it as a replacement for having to write. But like you said, like if you're coming at it 100%, you're going to put the effort in. It's a great way to kind of amplify that and to like enhance it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm gonna keep digging down here because we actually have some great resources and other shows that go along with this. But I am very curious, and this is obviously, if you're listening, this is two very like wordy people, right? Like two people that
Word
love
nerds.
writing, love the words. But maybe even with some of your disappointment in the output. Is it just kind of like, hey, does it sound too robotic? It sounds like too run of the mill, or maybe it just doesn't sound enough like you, or maybe what is that thing, at least right now with where you're at, that you're like, the output, at least for me, being a writer, technical writing background, that it just doesn't stack up?
A lot of times it's just too fluffy. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm one of the things I've done like recently that's helped a bit with that is adding custom instructions to GPT-4. So like kind of giving it some constraints, like here's my background. Like I'm a LinkedIn content creator. I'm also like a writer and editor. Don't limit things, like it loves rhetorical questions, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Like, so like a lot of those, like, don't ask rhetorical questions, keep it at around a 7th grade reading level. Don't use more than, I don't know, 12 to 15 words, absolute max in a sentence, that sort of thing. So just trying to you're right, like to make it sound more like me. I guess when I read it, like, or when I read the output, a lot of times that is kind of what I find, is that it just doesn't sound like my tone of voice or the way I would write something.
Yeah, and for those of you joining us here on the live stream, so Matt's talking about custom instructions, which I think there's great pros, but there's also some cons. So essentially, like he was saying, so instead of having to do a little bit of training each time you start a new chat in ChatGPT, you can essentially tell, hey, so the kind of the two different boxes where you can say, what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? And you can write about 1,500 characters there. And then also, how would you like ChatGPT to respond? The same thing. You can put in about 1,500 characters. So is this something that Matt, you, at least in your use cases, that you're finding custom instructions helpful?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just most helpful to provide some background, some context. I mean, I can see though, if you have to write in a bunch of different tones of voice. Like I have a friend who's she's an SEO blog writer, and she frequently has to use different tones of voice. And it's that's one of the reasons she doesn't kind of like the custom instructions, because she's not just writing one way, whereas I tend to write in one style. But yeah, definitely that is one potential downside, I think, if you have to vary your tone a lot. But I mean, I find that regardless of what I'm writing, I tend to write kind of the same way, for better or worse. So, like for me, it is helpful. And just like, context. Like even the other day, I prompted it, or I was asking it, I was just asking it something, and then it was just like, oh, given your background is, I was like, how do you know I'm a LinkedIn and it was like, you're it custom. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I didn't realize it just was just a reminder. It's referencing that context in any of your interactions with it.
Yeah, it is. And I think, in Matt, in your use case, it's perfect for that, right? Like custom instructions. Personally, I'm not a fan because I use ChatGPT for just about literally anything and everything you can think of. So sometimes those custom instructions, if you use ChatGPT all over the place, it can actually be like, wait, why am I getting responses all like this that are not really, in line with the prompt? And that can kind of be the reason why. But, speaking of prompting, Matt, kind of this term that's floated all over the place now is prompt engineering. And I make fun of the term a little bit because is it a real thing? Yes. But all prompt engineering is, to me, is knowing how to properly work with a large language model and getting the most out of it. But maybe even with your background as a writer, did you find prompting easier? Like, were you all of a sudden like, wait, my writing background, hey, maybe AI is going to take some writing jobs, but I can really get in and use ChatGPT and these large language models at a whole nother level just because of my background in writing?
Yeah, and that's actually something I didn't really. That's actually just something that's kind of occurred to me lately. Is that like as I've been digging into more kind of prompting, I'm taking some course. I'm taking Rob Lennon's AI content reactor course right now. I signed up for your prompt polish course as well. But like, yeah, it like as I was like reading some of this stuff in the AI content reactor course, I was like, well, he was talking about like the characteristics or the principles of good prompt writing. I was like, well, these are all just principles of writing well. So like using specific, clear, concise language, using language and kind of orienting your prompt, aiming it at a specific purpose or goal. I find same with like with content, like some of my best posts are ones that start with like a strong initial idea and I just like run with it. Same thing with prompts. I find my typical use case is to come at it with an idea already, not to just kind of not to use it to try and think of stuff. But I find that that's more effective. Like when you come at it with a strong idea and then have it expand on it, it already has kind of a direction to go and you're giving it some constraints and shaping that response. Also, something else I like to do in my content, but like using examples or analogies to illustrate my points clearly. Same thing with prompts and just really minimizing. You got to think of it as stupid, right? You got to think it doesn't know anything. You want to be as explicit and as clear and minimize ambiguity as much as possible. And I guess for me personally, one of the advantages that my technical writing background gives me is I'm really used to like writing in a structured, clearly organized way. Like pretty much everything I write, even if it's just like an email or something quick, I'll write like, even if it's just handwrite, a quick outline just because I like to have it organized. And I've found that ChatGPT really loves outlines, especially when they're kind of like structured and you break stuff down in like a well organized hierarchical fashion. So yeah, like I think that is one inherent advantage that writers have when it comes to prompting any large language model, like you said.
It's funny, Matt, because you said something there. You're like, oh, like prompting.
I just read this book recently. Great book.
Prompting is essentially writing well. It's actually one of my favorite books on writing. So I'm sharing it, if you're joining us on the podcast, throwing it up on the screen here.
Excellent book. Highly recommend.
It's called On Writing Well by William Zinsser. And this is like, it's funny because this book was originally from the 70s and, they update it every decade or so.
Yeah.
But like this could you could just put some duct tape on this and say prompt engineering 101, right?
Yeah, you totally could actually, because that's exactly what he talks about, those principles of writing well, right? Like clear, use precise language, minimize ambiguity, use examples and like analogies, like great book.
And I'm also curious, Matt, even for you personally, right? Because I have an agency, right? Now we're mainly focusing on generative AI, obviously, but even with your background in technical writing and now this like newfound understanding of, hey, I'm a great writer, I can translate that to generative AI and probably get way better outputs than the average person. How has that even changed or shaped your outlook on your career? Or has it?
Yeah,
Or
like
has it not yet?
no, it's definitely like, especially lately, like, I think that, AI is the future, right? For better or worse, like it's coming. And I think that, but I'm also like excited about it, just like the creative possibilities. Like it's just interesting, like it's just cool. And it also just feels like a space where there's a lot of it feels to me like I could come up with something new or innovative because it's like wide open, right? Like it's so new that like nobody's, there's experts in it, but like, right, that what they're an expert in is constantly changing, and the entire world of it is constantly changing. So it's definitely like, I'm really glad that I kind of made the jump on it when I did, and I'm telling everybody I know, like, this is the future, man. Like, and it's just efficient. If you're creative and kind of lazy like I am, and you want to do things in the most efficient way, like AI is awesome. Like,
Yeah. Especially when you can like refine those outputs and get them exactly how you need them or how you
yeah.
might want them. Matt, you said something there and it got me thinking back to my kind of initial learning curve, right? So, GPT-3, kind of the base technology was rolled out in a bunch of other third-party softwares before ChatGPT. So, some early ones were like Copy AI, Writer, Jarvis, now called Jasper. And at least for me, I had this weird feeling where when I saw the output and I worked with it a little bit, my background as a writer almost felt like threatened. Like, wait, what? Like, this is pretty good. Have you ever felt that way yet? And if so, maybe how did you respond to it? Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on GenAI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So, whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
No, not really. Like honestly, like
Mhm.
maybe I should. Like I said, you scared me last year with that post, but that was like a good thing anyway. But no, I don't. I'm not really threatened by it. But the thing is, too, I think that's important to remember is that like people like you and me, like we're using it every day and we're in this world. But like, there's so many people who haven't even like even the fact that I use it so much, I don't consider myself an expert by any means, but consider compared to probably like a large percentage of the population right now, or even people my age, I relatively am an expert, even though I don't think of myself as one.
Mhm.
No, I didn't feel threatened. Maybe that's my own hubris, but I did think I was like, this is going to replace a lot of mediocre writers. Like that was kind of my first thought. Like a lot of like kind of mediocre content writers and like blog writers and stuff. Like that's why I think you need to have like other skills. And I guess the good thing is that my background, I didn't just do one thing. Like I kind of have like copywriting and technical writing, and like so it's a bit more of a holistic approach to it, I guess. Like I'm not just doing one thing that can be replaced.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and it is worth mentioning. And again, Matt's content is great. We're gonna have a link in the show notes to follow. I know you're like same thing with me. You go through ebbs and flows, but he has so many great PDFs, carousels of just the very highly technical nature of writing in general. But I think you also did. I'm trying to remember, Matt. You did like the is this like which one's better at editing, like a
yeah.
human or AI, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. What was
Um,
what was kind of the general takeaway from those early experiments? Because yeah, like you kind of broke down, long, kind of extra wordy, sentences or paragraphs, and you went through, I think, and cut them down, and then you also use like AI, right?
Yeah. So I used a software called Unfluffer to kind of, so it had basically a big, long, wordy phrase, and then I showed the original and then 2 edits, one me, one versus the computer, but didn't tell you who was whose. Kind of had people go through them in the carousel, decide which one they like better, and then revealed who was who. So man 4, AI 1. That was the final score.
Man 4, AI 1. All right.
Yeah.
So AI didn't get blanked out, but human crushed it.
Yeah, human prevailed for now.
We're still there. Hey, humans, we're still there. Although, actually speaking of that, I've actually wanted to do this where I partner up. Who knows? Maybe I'll do it with you or someone else. I partner up with, a great writer, a great creator. I use AI to write posts as them, and then the human writes, and we put it out there, and we have people
That's a
vote.
cool idea.
Yeah,
Totally,
maybe
man.
we'll do that. Maybe we'll
I'd
do
totally
that in
be over
secret
that.
and
Yeah.
not tell anyone. Okay, let's get away from writing, because not everyone out there is reading William Zenzer like book twice a year, like
Not everybody's nerds like us.
No, not everything. So let's talk like creativity a little bit. So, obviously I think one of the things people always think about ChatGPT is, to help me write better content, but a lot of people either aren't very good at it, or they're not good at getting better outputs. But what other use cases specifically like have you found that are super helpful for you? Maybe some creative use cases that aren't just like, hey, write me a blog post on this. Like, what are you finding real value in as a writer specifically for these creative use cases?
Well, it's funny because like that's actually like the writing is like I don't think I've ever just really used it to like write me like a post. But my primary use case for it is like I really like using it as like a second opinion, like somebody to bounce ideas off of, like a writing partner. So a lot of times especially if you're somebody like me and you like kind of like are, really in the nitty gritty about the details of writing, like sometimes it'll come down to like the same sentence, like framed 2 ways, but like 2 words are different, or is this word better? Is this word better? I like to use it like as an interactive, like a virtual thesaurus, like that you can interact with. So like which one of these words fits this context better? Because sometimes it's hard to decide, right? And it's like it's nice to have like an objective outside opinion, especially when you get like too attached or you've been spending too long on something. Like I said, a second opinion, like an assistance. Expanding on an outline, like I said, a lot of the times I start with an outline. So, and ChatGPT loves really structured outlines. So I'll type up an outline and I'll feed it into GPT and I'll break down like the sections and all the subpoints and stuff like that. And I find with a really structured, by structuring it really clearly like that, it tends to provide better outputs in terms of ideation and talking points, finding different ways to frame an idea. So like if I have an idea for a post about this, how are like some ways I can frame it in a way, but make it relevant to my audience, like in a way they'll care about. Even last week, like for my newsletter I put out, it's kind of exploring the parallels. Like I'm a musician as well, between drumming and writing. So that was kind of something like I had the initial ideas, but I just, some of those talking points, like the sub points with ChatGPT, I fed that outline in and had it expand on the ideas a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and it's funny because this goes back to what we were kind of talking about earlier, is thinking of ChatGPT almost as an outside entity and as a second person and not as an extension of yourself. And Matt, you mentioned the Prime Prompt Polish, the PPP course, and I was actually shocked early on when I was really applying even my writing background to prompting and kind of like quote unquote prompt engineering. Like if you tell ChatGPT to almost work outside of you and to pick apart your ideas and your strategies in your writing. There's things like you just said, like you're a professional musician and a professional writer, and it was creating parallels that maybe you weren't even thinking of, right?
Yeah.
So like
for the most part, but like, and actually that's another one too, is like analyzing my writing, like what's good about it, what's bad about it, like especially what's bad about it, or like if I'm like, is this too long? Like, you know what I mean? What could I cut here? Like it's helpful to kill your darlings sometimes, right? It's like an objective outside hatchet man to come trim all the fluff away.
Oh, I love it. But I'm also thinking of Matt, just like a fluffy giant robot with an axe, coming
Yeah.
to chop
Hacking and
down.
slashing. Yeah.
Yeah, cutting all the fat from our wordy prose. Okay, so Matt, we've covered literally so much. We've talked about what you think the kind of the future is going to be for writers and content creators with AI. We've talked about how being a great writer to begin with is going to lead to better prompts, and even talked about a couple creative use cases using ChatGPT outside of writing. But maybe for someone else who's listening to this, who's kind of in your shoes, they're like, hey, I'm a great writer, but I haven't maybe gone all in yet, or I'm only dipping my toe in this whole generative AI thing. What maybe piece of advice might you have for them, or maybe a takeaway that you want people to leave this show with as they try to better leverage generative AI?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think a couple things. I would say just start playing with it and don't have any expectations, because I find that's the best way to learn, is just experiment with it. Like, don't just rely on it for the written. I mean, I think if you're a good writer, like, you're going to have certain standards anyway for your writing, but like,
Hopefully.
play with it. Yeah, hopefully. Play with it, explore it, and like just figure out ways to use it that aren't obvious necessarily, because there's tons of useful ways. And I think the other thing is too, that we're so overwhelmed. Like, there's so many AI tools all the time coming out every day. I think just pick one or two and just start like learning them. Like, you don't have to learn every tool. Pick one or two, and like develop the basics. Like, now, I mean, I pretty much just use ChatGPT, Midjourney, Unfluff, for a couple others. I know I'm not like you. I remember when we had met, you were just like, you have a subscription to like 20 of them.
Yeah, too many. This
But
is
now, like, I think that I've used it enough that, like, I think I understand the basics of it, that like, if I pick up another one, like, I mean, obviously there's going to be variations and maybe a different, but I think I know how to prompt a large language model now, right? Like, those basics. And actually, one more takeaway, actionable takeaway, and this actually came directly from you, Jordan, from like that when we met that time. And I don't know why I wasn't doing this before, was start a prompt library, like a document. Like, that was like, after I was like, why am I not doing that? As soon as we had our call, I started one, and because that's what you need, is like, when you come up with something good, put it in there. Everyone's giving away, and actually even for my newsletter, that's what I did. I gave away like my prompt library with like 8 of my best kind of custom prompts that I developed for content. Because like, everyone's giving away prompts, but what people need is like one central place to put them all and refer back to them. So yeah, those things. Play with it, learn the basics, pick one, and just sort of like start small and focus on it and get good with that, and then try and apply those principles to other AI tools and start a damn prompt library.
Get it going. My gosh, so much good information there, Matt. I love how we wrapped it all up. Just very actionable steps on how people, whether they're great writers or not, I think we can apply those steps to just about anyone. Matt, this was a great conversation. I had a great time. Thank you so much for joining Everyday AI Live.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks, Jordan.
All right. And hey, as a reminder, yeah, you can still get your AI news. We didn't share it here live today, but make sure you go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for that free daily newsletter. We're going to have the AI news, everything else that's going on, and we're going to break down more specifics on exactly what Matt was talking about. If you couldn't, write fast enough, all the notes, don't worry, we got you. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you back for another edition of Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.